Hey guys, how are we doing? So we're back on another Mother's Basement video, and this is called A Brief History of Pokemon Clones. Quite interested by this, by just the thumbnail really, because I was recognising a lot of shows that I used to watch when I was younger. Sure, Monster Rancher was on there, and then we've got Digimon obviously, and then a few others I can't remember because the thumbnail's not here, it's just a video. But I'm really looking forward to this. I think like I'm just going to be like, oh I watched that, oh I watched that, and yeah, let's see where Mother's Basement has to go with this. Hopefully there won't be any interruptions. Yeah, right, should be okay. Let's do this.
I've gotten pushback for saying a lot of contentious things in my time running this channel, and most of the time it's been for pretty predictable reasons.
Right.
But one thing that I didn't expect when I made my video about Pokemon Sun and Moon last summer, which has since been taken down and will not be going back up because ShowPro is the worst, was the small but vocal group of people who were upset that I referred to Digimon as a Pokemon clone. And on the one hand, I kind of get it. I was a huge Digimon fanboy
Digimon
when I
was
was a
amazing.
kid, and time and again I was frustrated to hear other kids ignoring the things that set the series apart and dismissing it as little more than a cash grab knockoff. But on the other hand, it's 2019 now. Digimon is beloved by millions and widely recognized for its own merits.
Adventure tries on Amazon. I can't wait to finally be able to watch it.
Its legacy. And I think it's a bit disingenuous not to acknowledge that it and many other anime and video games that came out around the same time took the shape that they did as a direct response to Pokemon and its unprecedented success.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So today I'd like to take a brief look at the exciting history of Pokemon knockoffs.
Cool.
And I'll tell you right now that since both knockoff and copycat are Pokemon moves and the series storylines involve a lot of cloning, this was a real bitch to Google. It's easy to forget in the information age when fads come and go in days or weeks and conversation-dominating, record-shattering media launches are almost an annual occurrence, but in the late 90s and early 2000s, Pokemon wasn't just a big deal. It was arguably the biggest deal that any one
Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue,
after
the best.
its release in February of 1996 and the release of its anime adaptation in April the following year, the franchise was already very successful.
Hell yes.
Both of those
Pokemon cards
came to the US concurrently in September of 1998, with the card game following just a few months later. The combined impact of that multimedia blitz was on a whole other level. And that's not even getting into the merchandise. Pokemon character goods are surpassed only by Mickey Mouse, Winnie the Pooh, and Hello Kitty for their ubiquity. Hardcore fans had obsessed over mega franchises like Star Wars before, but they were an exception. Kids in the late 90s, normal kids,
such a nostalgia trip.
The world, they lived Pokemon. You could wake up to watch the Pokemon anime over a breakfast of Pokemon cereal before school, play the Pokemon games on the bus, do schoolwork with Pokemon stationery, take Pokemon cards out of your Pokemon backpack to play and trade in the lunchroom, and then head home to watch a new Pokemon episode and play more Pokemon into the night.
I remember getting banned from a certain area of high school because we used to scam all the little kids into swapping like a lot of rare cards for rubbish ones.
And kept going until it recently became the highest grossing media franchise of all time. The games, TV show, and trading cards were and still are among the biggest earners in their respective industries.
Hell yes.
To date, Pokemon has grossed over $90 billion.
My
to put
God.
that in perspective, Harry Potter, which started its own mania at the exact same time, with its own video games and trading cards and feature films and a theme park, has grossed just $30 billion. So, yeah,
just
Pokemon was and is a big deal.
Yeah, it
and
is.
Naturally, other companies in Japan and abroad
wanted a piece of that. There we go.
Their efforts to copy Pokemon's success reshaped how we think about marketing and effectively established a new subgenre of video games and a new subgenre of anime, which makes Pokemon, to my knowledge, the only franchise to have a genre-defining impact on two existing mediums. Since Pokemon started its life as a video game back in 1996, it only makes sense for us to start there as well. And the story of the monster-collecting genre that Pokemon defined actually starts a few years before that. The Shin Megami Tensei franchise, which began with 1987's digital devil story Megami Tensei for the Famicom, has been built around the ability to recruit and fight alongside enemy demons since its inception. And Dragon Quest V, released on the Super Famicom in 1992, introduced a similar mechanic to the venerable JRPG franchise. While Pokemon reportedly started development in 1990, both of these games almost certainly had some influence on its design, especially Dragon Quest, and some would claim that they are the true originators of the monster collecting genre. But I'd argue that neither of them really fits into that subgenre. Rather, they're standard RPGs that just happen to have monster collecting mechanics added on. The key difference, as I see it, is that in both of those games, the recruited enemies fight alongside the player character and other party members who battle with their own equipped weapons and armor and level
rather than using them as something to attack each other.
Just like characters in any other RPG. In Pokemon, and just about every other game derived from it, the collectible monsters fight instead of the player character. Monster collecting games mainly provide players with strategic options through what they've collected, rather than complicated customization systems involving different kinds of equipment, skill trees, and other stat modifiers. This conceit makes the games a lot more accessible to kids and is, I would argue, one of the most significant factors in Pokemon's broad success. There was one game that toyed with a similar concept before Pokemon. 1994's RoboTrek, developed for the Super Famicom by Quintet and Ancient, allowed players to send teams of robots into battle in their place, but with a lukewarm critical reception and 65,000 total copies sold worldwide, it's pretty doubtful that anyone was looking to that game for inspiration. Not in nearly the same way that Pokemon's other forebearers looked to it. While Dragon Quest and Shin Megami Tensei did have monster collecting mechanics first, after Pokemon came out, both franchises released streamlined Game Boy spin-offs with child protagonists who recruit monsters to fight for them rather than alongside them. Dragon Quest Monsters in 1999 and Shin Megami Tensei Devil Children in 2000, respectively, the latter of which was released in the US as Demi Kids a few years later. Also, both of those series let players battle each other over link cable, and
get to the clones.
Pokemon's marketing hook of splitting tradable monsters.
I want to see you talk about Monster Rancher.
And you really don't have to look far to see other games taking similar cues. You might already be aware of Jade Cocoon.
Had a really cool thing for PlayStation, where it's like putting another game in as if it was a disc, and then it would turn into a monster. And put the game back in to play with it. It's like, what?
Different versions for the Game Boy Color, only one of which made it over to North America. What you might not be aware of is that Metabots began life as one of the earliest Pokemon copycats. Metarot, Kabuto, and Kuwagata versions for the Game Boy released by Natsume in
Metabots was cool, I love Metabots.
And that wasn't even Natsume's only Pokemon clone. They also published Keitai Denju Telefang Power and Speed versions for the Game Boy Color in 2000.
Damn.
And Smilesoft, the developer of those games, trafficked more or less exclusively in Pokemon knockoffs with their Dino Device and Network Bokenki Bug Sight series. All told, they released 5 Pokemon clones with 2 versions each between 2000 and 2003 when they were shut down, not because the games were mediocre, but because their president was arrested for child prostitution. I find the most depressing shit when I'm researching videos.
That's bad.
Even now, plenty of games take clear inspiration from Pokemon. Yokai Watch, Dinosaur King, Ni no Kuni. I mean, throw a rock and you'll hit like 6 Pokemon clones on the Google Play Store alone. It's also interesting how elements of Pokemon's design have evolved and been adopted into other genres. Mega Man Battle Network took its collecting and later trading mechanics and applied them to
the anime for that.
RPG. And Nintendo's own custom Robo series mixes the exploration and collection of a Pokemon title with Power Stone-esque arena fighting. Heck, in 1998, the Pokemon franchise released its own
card game,
riffing on that formula of exploration, collection, and battles. The Pokemon trading card game for Game Boy, an RPG with a similar structure that, as you might expect,
because we were also obsessed with the cards. We were like, what? You can play the card game on the Game Boy?
Would also serve as a template for its own subgenre of TCG RPGs based on Yu-Gi-Oh, Monster Rancher, and other properties.
Monster Rancher!
That's a topic for another day, maybe. Speaking of Monster Rancher, well, that franchise is a fascinating collectible beast in its own right. Released in late 1997 by Tecmo, the original PS1 game combined the monster battling elements of Pokemon with a cool gimmick that allowed players to create monsters from their CD collection.
Like I said,
simulationist monster
it's so cool. You'd like eject the game, put another CD in, close it, it would make a monster, put the game back in.
Pokemon and started its own craze craze, albeit a
Tamagotchi.
short-lived one. Considering that it was a 3D game in the 90s and it came out so soon on both of their tails, it's likely that Monster Rancher was in development before either Pokemon or Tamagotchi made it big.
Interesting.
But considering their success, it would be odd if Tecmo hadn't at least taken notes from the two growing juggernauts.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be the only company to take a crack at capturing their combined appeal. Bandai themselves created Digital Monsters, Digimon for short, in 1997 as a Tamagotchi equivalent.
Oh, I had those. They were so cool.
Which is kind of dumb since boys
plug
like
them next to each other and fight.
Whatever. The main difference was that Digimon could fight both in single-player battles and connected multiplayer.
So cool.
Two of Pokemon's flagship features, which may or may not be a coincidence. Without knowing how long it took to prototype and produce new virtual pet hardware and software in the 90s, I can't make a case one way or another as to whether the original Digimon V-Pet cribbed its connectivity
and the attack would fly over onto the other screen.
Though I have my suspicions. But I don't really need to, because within a few years of the pet's launch, Digimon was transparently copying and trying to compete with Pokemon through its own merchandise, a card game, and Pokemon-inspired RPGs on the PS1 and Bandai's own Gunpei Yokoi-developed handheld, the Wonder Swan. To be fair, it wasn't just Bandai taking these cheap shots. Nintendo returned fire in 1998 with their own Pocket Pikachu virtual pet, for instance.
Oh, I never seen that.
The fiercest arena of competition for the two monster franchises,
how did I miss out on
that? The mind of 8-year-old Jeff, was between their anime adaptations. And, I mean, the comparison in quality between the two is a no-brainer. Digimon Adventure is a much more interesting, dramatic, character-driven story, even in its first season, than anything that Pokemon was doing, and its third season is just... But without Pokemon and the Pokemon anime,
would it exist?
Probably wouldn't exist at all. Pokemon, along with Clamp's Card Captors, basically kickstarted the whole Mon genre, and even if the concept for Digimon Adventure had been realized independently of Pokemon's existence, it probably would have remained in its initial form as a 20-minute-long Mamoru Hosoda short film rather than being greenlit for television. Pokemon proved that kids loved the monster concept, but moreover, it showed how effective it was as a marketing tool. When Pokemon first came out, anime that existed solely to sell toys or other products to kids were nothing new. Pretty much every Sunrise Mecha show came with accompanying model kits, and lest we forget, Transformers was a Japanese co-production. But all of those glorified commercials took a similar approach, generally speaking. They made the toy designs themselves into the heroes and villains of the story, cool characters and vehicles, sometimes both at once, that could be turned into miniaturized versions for children to purchase for a nominal fee. But Pokemon, cribbing ideas from shonen manga and sports series of the time, made its hero a regular kid, just like you at home. And every week you could tune in to watch that kid meeting new Pokemon friends who would just make for the cuddliest plushies, wouldn't they? Or who would be so powerful if you could just add them to your Pokemon TCG deck. And most importantly, that kid was having the time of his life on the same adventure that you could have in the game. Pokemon built its story not around the product itself, but around kids interacting with that product. And I mean, just rewind the video if you want a refresher on how well that worked out for them. Not only did the anime move games and trading cards and toys in massive numbers, but kids loved watching it all by itself. It gave them a hero they could relate to and sold them on an appealing, accessible fantasy. It took about 2 years for the rest of the anime industry to put similar shows into production and catch up. Spring of 1999 gave us Monster Rancher and Digimon Adventure, with
Monster Rancher was a really good anime.
Metabots.
Metabots!
3 of those shows aired
so good.
for a full year. Digimon then got a sequel series in spring of 2000, which also saw the release of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, I think, the most significant milestone up to this point in the evolution of Pokemon anime clones. Because where Digimon Adventure and Monster Rancher did their own isekai thing, and Metabots had a similar premise to the Pokemon anime, mostly by virtue of being adapted from a game that ripped off the Pokemon game storyline, Yu-Gi-Oh! Seemingly represented a conscious effort to copy the anime's formula. If you're not aware, Yu-Gi-Oh! Hasn't always been about selling trading cards. There was actually a different Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime released in 1998.
I've only learned that from watching the abridged series.
About a meek little kid who's possessed by the murderous spirit of a dead pharaoh and uses his awesome game-playing abilities to punish and sometimes kill the people who bully him.
Yeah.
What a delightful story for kids. One of the games played in that manga, a trading card game called Duel Monsters, became quite popular with fans, and probably noticing the insane success of the Pokemon TCG,
they were like,
manga's publisher
stick with
Shueisha
that.
saw dollar signs. Quickly, efforts were put into motion to turn Duel Monsters into a real card game that real kids could buy. The first one, rushed out by Bandai
and it's doing so
with the
well
release of the
nowadays.
1998 anime, was, like every other Bandai CCG of the time, terrible, and it quickly flopped. The second one, launched by Konami in 1999, was also terrible, depending on who you ask, but terrible in the kind of way that made it the second most successful TCG on the
Blue
planet.
eyes like dragon.
Naturally, the manga's storyline was retooled to focus on the TCG, and a new anime was ordered to do the same. Seto Kaiba, originally just a crazy rich asshole card collector, was changed and built up to be an arrogant, hateable rival a la Gary Oak. He and Yugi were given irrational attachments to specific mascot monsters, and the plot shifted gears to an endless string of battles highlighting new cards and strategies, loosely connected by cheap, reusable woodland scenery. In its Duel Monsters incarnation, Yu-Gi-Oh! Still stands apart from other kids' anime of the time with its dark tones, strong characters, and a lot of cool ideas that remain from Kazuki Takahashi's original manga. But at the same time, especially if you look at it next to the Twisted Season 0, you can clearly see where they borrowed structural elements and even cost-saving measures that were proven to work in Pokemon. Summer of 2000 came and went with the start of a second Metabot season. Then, in fall, a 50-episode adaptation of Shin Megami Tensei Devil Children aired to coincide with the release of that game. Clearly an attempt to capitalize on the kind of cross-promotional buzz that pushed Pokemon to the insane heights it reached in the US.
I did not see
that.
And
then, at the start of the next year, we were given Beyblade. Beyblade is the apotheosis of every marketing trend that the Pokemon anime set in motion. A show where the collectible monsters are literally just stickers on toys, sanitized and sanded down to remove every possible edge, with the only themes other than buy our toy to be a cool kid being loose messages of friendship and determination.
Making your own Beyblade, putting a metal spinner on it, bounce it out.
And as a stupid 10-year-old kid, that fucking show sold me so many goddamn tops.
Hell yeah.
Beyblade strips away the monster personalities, the creative world building, every part non-essential to the core marketing engine of Pokemon,
Triple
and
battle
distills
set.
it all down to pure formula. To start things off,
God.
you create a group of kids with varied personalities designed to hit the widest possible cross-section of an 8 to 12 focus group. The main one starts down on his luck until he gets his hands on your toy and is instantly empowered to change his life for the better. You should have the band get together by episode 8 or so after some arguments and heated battles to establish rivalries. Then the kids start going to tournaments, experiencing an emotional roller coaster of anticipation, mild disappointment, and excitement in that
it escalated so much like this series.
And they keep going.
There was like people being like
supernatural nonsense
biologically engineered to control really powerful Beyblades.
Whatever your toy is, if you insert it into that formula where appropriate, you will be able to keep kids engaged. Hell, Yakitate Japan basically does that with baking bread, and as funny as it is, it's also unironically engrossing in exactly the same way as any other tournament-driven toy commercial. And while Japan would keep producing anime and manga about kids on fun adventures with magical pets or sidekicks or whatever, like Mon-Kole Knights fighting Foodons and Zatch Bell, and the Mons genre status would be solidified through dark subversions like Kiba and Narutaru, as well as a harem parody in the form of Sekirei, ultimately I think it's that terrifyingly effective core marketing formula that is Pokemon's most enduring legacy. I've already noted how ubiquitous it is in card game anime. Even Vanguard, the one that I liked, follows that formula to the letter.
It's meant to be quite good, Vanguard. I mean, it must be.
Like Beat-em-on
it's quite popular, isn't it?
But to really see the impact this formula has had, you need look no further than Gundam. Gundam has gotten by for literally decades, selling Gunpla model kits solely with its war-driven storylines. But even though that works really well for them, Sunrise still saw fit to create the Build Fighters series.
Oh,
an
yeah.
anime where the heroes are children, which isn't new for Gundam, but these kids are happy, so that's different. And where the toys don't just represent their weapons, they are their weapons, which they use to claim fame and glory in, say it with me, a series of tournaments occasionally interrupted by supernatural nonsense. If it sounds cynical when I break it down like that, that's only because it is cynical. But there's also something innately appealing about it, and the way that it sells kids on a fantasy that's accessible in real life, as long as they have the money to spend on
That's cool.
Build Fighters like Beyblade and Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a lot of fans, and one of the big
It really
complaints
does.
that those fans had about the new VR MMO anime, Gundam Build Divers, was that it took away that tangible connection to the fantasy by taking the physical Gunpla out of the equation. People, and especially kids, like watching shows where other people do cool and fun things that they can do too. They like fantasizing about achieving the same thing their heroes achieve. That's why the formula works. Ironically, Pokemon itself has more or less abandoned the formula that it had a hand in creating in favor of a lighter slice-of-life comedy that happens to involve cute monsters.
Aww.
The same approach taken by the Yokai Watch anime. And time will tell which is more or less effective at keeping people engaged. I know that I find Pokemon to be way more entertaining now, but tons of people have said they preferred the stories being told in X and Y. But regardless of what form it takes, I think it's a pretty safe bet that Pokemon will keep rolling on, generating new anime
It's just such a
episodes,
recognizable franchise.
movies, games, and trading cards, and most importantly for Nintendo, Creatures Inc., OLM, Game Freak, Niantic, and everyone else with a finger in the metaphorical pie, more money. And as long as it does, other companies and creators will keep following its example, trying to carve off a sliver of that pie for themselves. And maybe if we're lucky, some of those, like Digimon and Metabots and Yu-Gi-Oh! Before them, will give us or our kids something new to really love. Because if this little history lesson has taught you anything, I hope it's that there's nothing inherently wrong with following the example of something that works, even if your goal is mainly profit. Almost nothing is original, and many of the things that we love today were created with some kind of commercial goal in mind. For anything like a movie or TV show that took more than a handful of people to create, that's all but guaranteed. And it's important to be aware of those commercial goals, but they don't mean that you can't still enjoy or love those things. Digimon was a Pokemon clone.
It was.
It was also a way better anime than Pokemon.
It was a better anime, I'll say it.
Let me know in the comments below which of the
Digimon
shows
was so good first 3
inspired
seasons
by
anyway.
Pokemon was your favorite, and while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like button if you like the video, and hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos from me every week. I'm Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.
That was cool. I didn't expect to enjoy that video as much as I did. There was so much nostalgia within that video. I was just like, yeah! I'm so glad he went into Monster Rancher and how it actually worked. I'm so right. I'm so glad that I wasn't being stupid. I thought to myself, that is how it worked, isn't it? As I explained that. And then, yes it is. Oh, it's amazing. Metabots was good as well. I had like miniature Metabot figures at some point. I can't remember where they've gone. And my Pokemon trading cards are somewhere as well. I got some really good ones. I got the first ever Pokemon Shiny that had 3 attacks. It was Rocket's Mewtwo. It was the first time a Pokemon card had actually 3 attacks you could choose from. And, since then they did other cards with it, but that was the first one, and I got that by tricking some little kid. I traded him like 5 OK cards for it because he didn't realise what it was. I was like, oh my god, I've got Rocket's Mewtwo now. Yeah, it didn't take long. It was only like a month, and then like none of my age group was allowed in the area called the Quad anymore, because that's where all the little kids hung out trading Pokemon cards. And we were just going in like, right, who are we gonna rip off today, boys? We were horrible. We did what we had to do for those Pokemon cards. So anyway, God, thank you guys very much for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys next time. Sorry, I filmed this like as soon as I got out of bed because I needed to get stuff done. So yeah. Bye.